Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Austria once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that arrived in Hansbox number 1. So first and foremost, a massive shout out and thank you to Hans Feigl, my Austrian beer mule living in Vienna. He very kindly sent me a box quite recently of some Viennese microbrewed Vienna lagers, and I'm going to be working my way through these over the next couple of videos. I'm really looking forward to it because you don't get to try so many Austrian beers. You don't find Austrian beer outside of Austria all that much, to be honest, and I think he's picked me out some very nice ones. So fingers crossed the one that we're going to have a look at today is a good beer. Thank you once again to Hans for making this review and all the other Austrian ones possible, and I sincerely hope that you guys watching are going to enjoy this Austrian mini series of beers that you'll see over the next little while. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to stick to Vienna, and we're having a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So yeah, we are going to go to the Ottakring area of the city, which is out to the west, and we're having a look at my first beer from Braumanufaktur Schalken. So this particular beer is called Gemeindebrau. It comes in at 5.1% ABV, and this one is a Vienna lager. So the name of this beer translates into English as kind of like local brew, or the local area brew, I guess we could say, or local community brew, I guess is another way that you could translate Gemein. Yeah, fingers crossed this is another good one. Definitely cool to be able to review some more Vienna lagers and things for you here on the channel, because it's a style that you don't find too much or too many examples of these days. But yeah, 5.3% are this one. So let's get on and have a look at this beer then. Let's crack on with the review. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Braumanufaktur Schalken. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for the Austrian beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I am working my way through the beers that Hans sent me. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Braumanufaktur Schalken then, on to my brewery notes. So Braumanufaktur Schalken, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in the Ottakring area of Vienna, which is out to the kind of west of the main central part, and the company was founded by the brothers Robert and Roland Schalken, whom of course it takes its name from. But these two are both trained jazz musicians, but they gave up their musical careers to brew beer, and they seem to be really enjoying it. But they started off as hobby or home brewers in around 2014, and they initially brewed in a relative's kitchen in Enzesfeld Linderbrunn in Triestingtal, which is in southern Austria, and they used an old mulled wine cooker apparently to do their first batches, which is quite interesting. But they continued to build up their equipment over the years and kind of refine their brews before they officially founded the company together in 2018. But they subsequently moved to Vienna, first to Josefstadt and then to Neulichenfelder Straße, which is where they're still currently based today. But they started off brewing there commercially using a self-built 200-litre kit, and then they upgraded to a 500-litre brew kit in 2019, which they started brewing with early the following year in 2020. But they like to say they are the second largest brewery in Ottakring. I saw that in a few of the articles that I read about this brewery, and I think this is intended as a joke and as a reference to the big Ottakringer Brauerei that you've seen me review on the channel before. I think that's where they were going with these kind of statements. So yeah, the second largest brewery in Ottakring, a little microbrewery, which is pretty cool. But as of June 2021, these guys have produced around 30 different kinds of beer. There are quite a few different styles there amongst their repertoire, I guess you could say, or their assortment. So yeah, they seem to be quite highly rated. So if you're interested in trying some Viennese microbrew, then I guess Braumanufaktur Schalken is a good place to start. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you. about these guys for the moment. That was all the information I was really able to find on these guys from researching around a little bit. But yeah, if you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. It's quite simple and quite tasteful actually, which is kind of cool. Tells you a little bit on the side there. So there you can see the Braumanufaktur Schalken symbol there. But yeah, it's saying here this beer was first brewed by Braumanufaktur Schalken in the year 2019 in the middle of the Vienna Brausteuer, which is, I think that's just in the middle of the brew residence, I guess you could say. But yeah, saying it's a vol beer on the side, red bottle cap on this one, and as it says, it tells you it's 5.3%. I think I might have said it was 5.1% at the start of the video, so if I did, I do apologise for lying to you. But yeah, you can see this one is a 330ml bottle, and I think Hans told me this one costs somewhere in the region of like €2 or €2.50. Yeah, Austrian beer I think is a little bit more expensive than the German and Czech counterparts, of course. And I always link these three countries together because these are the main lager brewing countries in Central Europe, of course. But yeah, 5.3% Vienna lager, this one. Hopefully it's interesting. So I guess we should get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So, as I've told you before, a little bit of smoke on the opening there. As I've told you before, the definition of a lager beer is a beer that uses cold temperature fermentation or bottom fermenting yeast, as we can also say. So the fermentation in these beers usually takes place between 8 and 12 degrees Celsius. Ale fermentation is a lot higher in terms of temperature. It takes place usually between 15 and 18 degrees Celsius. The Vienna lagers, in my experience, tend to be more malty and kind of oily and bready lager beers actually. So that's the thing that would really define Vienna lager for me. So yeah, lots of different types of lagers though. You've got the Pilsners, you've got the Helles, and the Czech equivalent, the Svetli. You've got the Märzen and the Czech equivalent, the Letzak, the German Dunkel, the Czech Cherny, the German Schwarzbier, the Czech Tmavi. What else have we got? You've got the Bock beers as well, which are also lagers, and then you've got the Vienna lagers too. So there's lots of different variety of lager beers, but as I say, it's low temperature fermentation, bottom fermenting yeast that defines a lager beer, if you like. But yeah, as you can see, this one has poured to be very, very nice. So you can see that this beer has a lovely kind of rich amber colour to it. When we poured the beer, of course, it had about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say kind of creamy coloured head there, and that's faded away to just be a very thin foamy layer, but there is a nice little bit of kind of foam just sitting there around the edge of the glass. But in terms of colour, this one is quite similar to like a West Coast IPA in terms of its colour, but yeah, nice kind of rich amber. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. That usually determines the magnitude of the colour of your beer. 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. 3, any adjuncts that you use. And 4, barrel aging will also affect the colour of your beer. But obviously variables 3 and 4 are not at play when it comes to this Vienna lager, of course. This one is more about the type of malts that you're using and the wort boil. So I think probably a lager beer like this probably will undergo a wort boil of somewhere between 60 to 90 minutes. I don't think it's going to be overly, I don't think it's going to be a particularly long boil for this one, but yeah, probably the colour. And this one will be down to classic Vienna malts, which give you a lovely kind of brown bready, biscuity and caramelly sort of vibe to the beer. But in terms of a Vienna lager, this one looks pretty much as you would expect, this lovely kind of coppery colour. Some of them can be a little bit darker and more sort of, you know, mahogany or chestnutty, and some of them can be a wee bit brighter than this as well, yeah, a kind of even brighter orange. But yeah, it certainly looks the part of a Vienna lager. Looks like a very, very nice beer. So yeah, nothing surprising about this one in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on with it. Very curious, I have to say. that does smell quite nice. You can see that here the dog's going crazy as well. But yeah, the aroma of this one is quite nice actually. First off, I'm going to say that this is one of the more it's got everything you'd expect in the aroma from this style, but it certainly comes across as having a little bit more of a grainy, bready presence to it, which I can certainly appreciate. So it almost smells like it's got a little bit of a kind of rye bready quality to it. But yeah, that's the first impression I get of this one. But it smells pretty typical for the. It does smell pretty typical for the Vienna lager style, just a little touch more grainy, as I say. But yeah, let's try and break that aroma down for you a little bit more then. So the backbone of this beer is definitely like a nice, you do get a mix of different kind of bready characters to this one. So you can smell, as I say, that slightly more kind of pungent, well not pungent, you can smell that more kind of grainy rye bready quality in there, but you also get a nice kind of smooth kind of wholemeal brown bready element in there. And you know, in Central Europe, in the Czech Republic, in Germany and Austria, you get some awesome bakeries there. It's one thing I do miss about living in Germany, was just having that you know, fresh bread that you got down there. But the Vienna lager for me always has a little bit of this. So yeah, a little bit of kind of almost rye type bread in there, a little bit of a kind of more grainy bread crust, some nice wholemeal brown bread, but you've also got a straight up sweet caramel in this one, and it's got a very slight kind of toasty brown sugar note to it, this beer as well. So a good balance between the more kind of the brighter, more oily and sweet brown sugary elements in there, and the more kind of biscuity, and then you've got a little bit of that more kind of biscuity McVitie's digestive sort of thing in there as well, which is kind of interesting. I'm not sure how good a reference that is for Austrian viewers though, but yeah, McVitie's digestive biscuits, that more kind of grainy, biscuity, cookie-like brown sugary note that you get out of this is quite distinctive as well. So I really like that. It's as I say, this kind of malt base is one of the distinctive features of the Vienna lager for me. Right, you get a lot of that in this one. As I say, overall, I would say that this, as a Vienna lager, generally speaking, this is one of the more kind of grainy ones that I've come across. Almost, it really does just smell like it's got a little bit more of a kind of grainy rye bready type quality to it. But yeah, interesting for sure, definitely interesting. In terms of the hoppy side of things then, so for me, with this beer, you do get a little bit of a it's kind of got the characteristics you would expect. A Vienna lager, of course, is going to use some kind of, you know, German type, you know, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be German. It's going to use some kind of noble hop, be it Czech Sats, a local Austrian hop, or a German one, or a Slovenian one. So you're getting some of these kind of typical noble hop type elements out of this beer as well. So a nice kind of, there's a wee bit of a smooth earthiness to this one, definitely, but I think there is a wee bit, the earthiness builds a good bridge with that slightly grainier backbone that this beer has, but you get a nice little touch of herbal quality in there, and a good bright floral aromaticity as well, which is quite nice. And there's a wee bit of zestiness to the grassy side of this beer too, which I very much like. So it gets a thumbs up from me for its green component. I think that a good lager beer should have a little bit of a kind of hoppy green bite to it, if you like. So yeah, the aroma of this beer, I think. Goes together very, very nicely. A little bit of wee touch of earthiness, nice kind of bright floral aromaticity, and also just a wee touch of a kind of grassy, zesty quality. So yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me in that regard, actually. So yeah. Yeah, green component is quite nice. On the fruity side of things, again, it's kind of what you'd expect. For me, there's a little bit of a kind of, you do get a wee bit of that kind of appley, well, I'll say it's more of a peary kind of quality that you get in this one. There's one or two very light sort of figgy, candy, strawberry type notes in this one. But yeah, see, it's a mix of a kind of juicy, as I say, a little bit of a kind of candy strawberry sort of thing, a wee bit of a kind of oily pear or something like that, and maybe just a wee hint of a kind of appley quality in this one too. Yeah, I think that suits it. Just a wee tiny touch of a red fruity character, some nice oily pear for me, and one or two little other things too. A little bit like a kind of fruit, you know, a fruit bread loaf kind of thing that you get out of this beer. But yeah, overall, it's quite an interesting aroma that comes off of this one, I have to say. But yeah, I'm very, very curious to try this one. So thumbs up to Braumanufaktur Schalken for the aroma of this one. But let's have a look at this beer then. So this one is the Gemeindebrau, a 5.3% Vienna lager from Braumanufaktur Schalken in the Ottakring area in the west of Vienna, down in Austria. Thank you again to Hans for making this review possible. One thing I'll also say, because I know that some people get sensitive about the glassware, I know that this is not the correct, the usual glassware, I guess you could say, for a Vienna lager, but I like the tulip glasses. I think these are the best all-round glasses for different styles, and this is why I use it in the majority of the reviews. But yeah, let's get stuck into this one. Yeah, the Gemeindebrau from Braumanufaktur Schalken in Ottakring, down in Austria. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers, and prost. Thank you to Hans once again. Ooh, that's very nice. Yeah, I think it's got a really this one, it's a lot kind of smoother and slightly sweeter than I thought it was going to be from the aroma. Although in fairness, the things that you expect based on the aroma of this beer, they come out a little bit more the further that you go into the aftertaste. So that's an interesting point to make about this one for sure. But I'm going to say straight away, this is a very, very nice beer. It's got a lovely kind of cleanliness to it, and a little bit of a kind of oily slickness to it also. That's kind of interesting. I need to go down to Austria and try some of these beers on tap. From what I understand though, to find Vienna lagers in Vienna can be quite difficult actually. But yeah, I think there are obviously a few good examples out there, as Hans has shown me by sending me all these different beers. But yeah, this one, the first impression I have of this one is that it's a very clean and slightly slick and oily kind of lager, this one. But I like it. I do like this one. So thumbs up to Braumanufaktur Schalken for this. Let's try and break down the flavour of it a little bit more for you and describe it properly. So, across the middle of your palate then, you can see that nice kind of, you can feel that nice kind of smooth brown bready quality. That just goes right across the middle of your palate. What you'll feel with this beer as well is that it does get a little bit more kind of grainy and things the further that you go into the aftertaste. So it's almost like you've got a smooth kind of wholemealy brown bready quality going right across the middle of your palate, but then it dries out a little bit and you start to get these more kind of grainy, almost rye bready type notes. But as you move towards the edge of that middle third of your palate, as you move towards the edge of that, you start to get a little bit more of, you know, you can feel that it's a little bit more kind of bread crusty in a sense, and a little bit more kind of toasty and grainy in that way. So yeah, I do like how that goes together. So yeah, the way that comes out is very, very nice, and I think that this beer, the sort of malty backbone of it, just mellows out a little bit the more that you drink of it too. So on top of that, as we say, on top of that kind of bready backbone that it has, you start to get some of the sweeter brown sugary elements. But what I would also say is that in the middle third of your palate, if you go towards the front half of that middle third of your palate, you can feel one or two little woody flavours starting to push their way out of this beer the further that you go along with it as well. But yeah, on the brown sugary side of things, on top of that brown bready layer, if you like, you've got a kind of like oval or a circle in the middle of your palate, and if you go to the dead centre of that circle, which we'll call the dead centre of your tongue, you can feel a nice sweet oily caramel in there, and that's going to be both from the Vienna malts that are obviously in this beer, and also it's kind of covering up the booziness of the beer too, if you like. But yeah, dead centre of your palate, you've got a nice kind of more oily caramel there, and as you move further out from that, it gets a little bit sort of, it does get a little bit kind of brighter. It does get a little bit brighter and more kind of sweet in a sense. And then as you move towards the the very edge of that middle third of your palate, you've got a bit more of a kind of biscuity, McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, I do like how that goes together in this beer as well. I mean, it's got a nice, the biscuity notes I think come out nicely, but I think it's the oiliness, the more kind of oily character of the brown sugars that kind of lingers there a little bit in this one. But yeah, that's your characteristic of a Vienna lager for me. Usually it's got a nice kind of brown bready backbone to it, bit of an oily caramel, and also a bit of a kind of biscuity quality. And this beer is showing off all of these kind of characteristics, if you like, really nicely. So yeah, thumbs up to Braumanufaktur Schalken for this. It's a solid beer, this one, from that malty perspective. But yeah, let's look at the back third of the tongue quickly then. So on that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build-up once again, and you can feel that the bread crusty qualities are a little bit more sort of kind of, how would we say, they're a little bit more kind of concentrated. The sort of bread crusty things, they're a little bit more kind of concentrated on that border region. But as you go into the back third of your palate, you can feel there's a more kind of, you get a little bit more of that grainy kind of brown, brown bready sort of thing underneath. Then on top of that, you can feel a little bit of the smoother wholemeal bread, and then on top of both of those two layers, you get the more yeasty elements of the beer. So you can feel there's a bit of that more airy, yeasty type quality on top of the back third of your palate. So when you start at the back of your palate and just come further forward, you can feel that the flavour just condenses down a little bit. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, you can feel the flavours are a bit more kind of squashed together in a sense. So yeah, I think that works really nicely. The malty and yeasty side of this beer goes together very, very well. But let's focus on the hoppy and fruity side of things then. So yeah, back corners of your palate, you've got a nice little touch of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, you can feel it develops a little touch of a herbal quality, but as you move further forward towards the kind of front corners of your palate, it gives you a nice kind of floral aromatic sort of thing, and it's quite a bright floral aromaticity, I would say. And I would guess that maybe this is using one of the local Austrian hop varieties, because it tastes a little bit different from the Czech hops and the German hops and the Slovenian ones as well that I'm a bit more familiar with. I'm not too familiar with the different Austrian varieties that are out there, but yeah, it feels like it's got a little bit of the spiciness of the Czech hops, but it's got a bit more of the brightness that you'd expect of the German ones. So that makes me think probably there is an Austrian hop in this. But yeah, you get a nice kind of mix of bright and slightly spicy floral aromaticity on the front corners of your palate, and as you go round the front curve of the tongue, the beer is distinctly lighter and grassy, and it's got a wee touch of zestiness in there as well, which I certainly appreciate. So yeah, the grassy side of things with this beer seems to be really nice as well. As I say, the zestiness comes out a little bit more the further that you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, green component of this one, not surprising, but a nice level of kind of brightness and things to it. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, so let's look at that front third of your palate. Border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, there's a little bit of a bready build up there and a bit more of a kind of grainy bread crusty quality. Then the base of that front third of your palate has a little bit more of a kind of smooth, wholemealy type bread thing there, that sort of brown bready element that I was talking about earlier. And on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on those now. So yeah, when you take this beer in, you are going to get a little bit, you can feel that there's a little touch of a kind of, I do get a little bit of a kind of sultana-like quality. It's got a wee touch of sharpness in there as well, which is interesting. So on the back half of that front third of your palate, for me, it really comes to be a little bit more like a kind of sultana type note. And I've had to clarify this before. Sultanas to me are the sort of dried white, green kind of pinky grapes. It's these kind of ones. So on the back half of that front third of your palate, it's quite a sort of sultana type dried fruity note that you get out of it. But as you move further forward, I think it develops to be a little bit more of a kind of oily pear, like on the front half of that front third of your palate. It feels like it's a more kind of oily pear, but there are one or two little elements of a kind of very slight red fruity quality to this one, like a sort of candied strawberry or something like this. There's just a wee touch of that red fruity note, and maybe even a little hint of a kind of appley quality. But as you reach the kind of front tip of your palate, you'll feel those kind of more grassy esters coming out of the beer too. So it's really interesting how that side of it goes together. But fruity side for me, yes, sultanas, maybe a tiny little hint of like a dried apricot or something like that, a little bit of that, some oily pear, and then a wee touch of a kind of candied red fruity note coming out of this one. But yeah, the oily pear is on the front half of that front third of your palate. On the back half, it's a little bit more of a kind of sultana type quality that comes out of this one. So yeah, I like how I do like how the fruity side of the beer goes together. But overall, this is a nice Vienna lager, and it's quite different to the other ones that I've had within this style bracket before. And this is what you want when you're exploring a style properly, I guess we could say, for the first time for me at least. I've had a few of the bigger brewed Vienna lagers and a few foreign brewed examples of this style, but to try some of the micro brewed ones from Vienna itself, I think is very cool. And this just kind of shows you, I think I'm going to learn a little bit about the sort of diversity within this style over the next few videos and things like that. But this one strikes me as a very clean and quite slick example of the style. And it just, as I say, it has a wee bit more graininess. Again, I'm noticing that the more that I drink of this beer, it develops a little touch of woodiness and a bit of a kind of bready graininess as well the further that I go into the aftertaste with it. And the fruity side of things, of course, it's quite nice too. A little bit of dried fruity character and a more oily quality there as well. But I think we should focus on the mouthfeel then, just to round off this review. So, as is the case with most lagers, I would describe this beer as fairly kind of light-bodied. The carbonation, what we say, I think it is quite smooth in this one, to be fair. And the beer itself, it's got a wee bit of slickness to it, and at the same time, it has a little bit of a that typical sort of Central European Brauhaus kind of smoothness, as I would always call it. It has got a little bit of that, but I suspect if you had this beer on tap, it would come across as significantly smoother and maybe not quite as clean in the bottle, if that makes sense. I always find that when you have the lager beers on the tap, it's the bready sort of flavours and the smoothness is promoted a little bit more. But yeah, it's interesting with this one. A little bit of slickness, light-bodied beer, pushing towards the top end of light-bodied, I would say. But yeah, it goes together quite nicely, and it's got a nice kind of crisp quality to it as well. But yeah, malty side of things, like I say, you've got a nice kind of grainy backbone to it. It's got a wee bit of smoothness in there, and you've also got some kind of smooth, as I say, you get smoother bready notes, but then you've got a sweet kind of caramelly note and a little bit of a kind of grainy quality in there as well. But the hoppy side of things, there's a wee bit of bitterness in there. I think this is maybe about a 20, maybe even 25 IBU beer, this one, which I think is pretty standard for the style. So a little bit of IBU to this one, which you would want, of course. But yeah, and with the fruity side of things, wee bit of dried fruity quality, a little bit more of an oily, juicy side to it as well. But I would describe the fruits as being kind of sort of slick, and they've got a little bit of slickness to them and a little bit of oily character as well. But yeah, this one has been an interesting experience for my first Viennese microbrewed Vienna lager, actually. So yeah, thank you again to Hans for making this review possible, and I hope that you guys watching enjoyed it as well. And well done to Braumanufaktur Schalken for an interesting beer, and I look forward to trying a few more of their beers at some point if we can get a hold of them. But yeah, let's leave it there then. So this one was the Gemeindebrau, a 5.3% Vienna lager from Braumanufaktur Schalken in the Ottakring area in Western Vienna, down in Austria. So yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Braumanufaktur Schalken. If you do have any Austrian brewery recommendations, let me know about those in the comments section below as well, and I'll talk to Hans about those and see about getting those sorted for you in the next Austrian box that we do, probably at some point. Pardon me, later in the year or early next year or whatever, but we will see about doing another Austrian beer box. So yeah, thanks again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Braumanufaktur Schalken social media, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Slange, skull, cheers, prost.